Hi folks, Dave, the Honest Audiophile. This is the Topping D90iii Sabre, and these are my Honest Audiophile impressions. I want to thank Apos Audio for providing the Topping D90iii Sabre for a review. Greatly appreciate it. Apos Audio, you rock. Alright, so the Topping D90iii Sabre, this will set you back $900 from a bank account. It is a standalone DAC. Topping has crammed in all sorts of technological advances and all kinds of other stuff that we're not going to discuss in this review. So if you are interested in all that is crammed inside this little device, please check out the link somewhere on the screen or down below. That way you'll know all the information that is included that isn't being mentioned in this review. All right, so the Topping D90iii Sabre. This is the third version of the D90 line, and it looks like a D90. It's available black or silver, and you have the usual build, aluminum build here, and then you have a big screen on the front. On the bottom, you have some feet, and then on the top, it's no venting. And we have a high-res sticker. It's gotta sound good. All right, so on the front side, you have that big screen as mentioned. Over here, you have a power button for when you're in standby, and then also a selector button when you're going through the menus. And then to go through the menus, you have a volume knob and multifunction button. On the back side, you have your main power switch, your power supply in, some inputs for your trigger, AES input, USB input, your Bluetooth antenna, coax, fiber optic, I2S, RCA out, and XLR out. It's very nicely laid out, very well built. This thing's not really that heavy, but it does stay very well on the desk. It's not going to take up a whole lot of room either. The Topping D90iii Sabre comes with a few accessories, nothing too special. You get a USB to USB-C cable, and then you get your power cord, and you get a full function remote control. Pretty typical of Topping to provide one of these. It looks just like all the others and works very well. You can control everything that you need to, and it runs off of 2 AAA batteries. All right, so the Topping D90iii Sabre, it does have a couple things I want to mention real quick. It has all kinds of filters that you can go through, which are your pretty typical filters. And did they make differences? Sure, I heard little subtle differences, but nothing really stood out. I used the appetizing filter. And then it also has a couple different modes. It has transistor mode and valve mode. Now you can override that and not use it, which is the way that I used them. And going from transistor mode, there was a little bit of a difference. It wasn't something that was super like, whoa, this is totally different. But it did have a little bit more of a focus on the details and resolution. And it turned it to be a little bit more of a colder presentation. And then putting it on valve mode, you got a little bit of warmth and just a little bit of a little extra body. But neither one of them were really that impressive to me, and just was like, I'm going to use that one over the others. And so I used it in off mode, which sounds perfectly fine for me. Inside the D90iii Sabre is 2 Sabre DAC chips, and those are the ES9039 Pro DAC chips. It also has the ability to use to output in 4-volt or 5-volt mode, and that was an interesting little experience. And if you want a little bit more, put it in 5-volt mode, but I didn't really notice a significant difference, but it is cool that they provide that. The Bluetooth is Bluetooth 5.1. It stayed very well connected and was easy to stay connected, and I was able to walk around the house, have no issues while playing music. Works great. All right, so how does the Topping D90 Sabre sound. So the Topping D90 Sabre has a sound signature that took me by surprise. I was rather impressed actually with the Topping D90 Sabre. The bass extends nicely into the sub bass, and it has enough rumble and grumble and impact and slam and punch to keep the music engaging. It's adequate in that, but it is not the most dynamic and not the most authoritative of bass. But the tone and timbre is very good. It has a very nice natural reproduction of instruments, and it just sounded very, what's the word that we're looking for? Very natural. And then the details and resolution is also very good. I was rather impressed. And how much details you get. The D90 Sabre focuses a lot on the details and its resolution, and it does a very good job of that. I do wish though that the bass just had a little bit more body and a little bit more wallop to the overall presentation. It has enough to not be boring, but it doesn't have enough to really drive home the music and engage. The mids, like the bass, have very good tone and timbre, and it sounds very natural. It sounds very realistic. Instruments and vocalists sounded very nice. Overall, the mids have a nice presentation that's very engaging, and they are more of the spotlight than the bass. The upper mids have a little bit more of a highlight on them than the rest of the mids, but it's not enough to be off-putting or to be distracting. It just kind of puts a little bit more of an emphasis on the upper mids, where they're pushed to the middle just a little bit. Overall, though, instruments sound very accurate and true, and they have nice note weight, and it's just a very engaging and detailed and resolving mid. Just like the bass, the Topping has taken the details of mids and brought them to the forefront, and it's really the focus, and then they're very well resolved. Treble extends very nicely, and up top there's some nice air and a little bit of space, and there's some good presence there without being fatiguing. And then the rest of the treble is very well controlled, has enough bite and edge to sound accurate and true, and it has very good tone and timbre, very natural and accurate. And then the details, just like the mids, just like the bass, is very much the focus, and the resolution also is very, very good. Overall, I was rather impressed at how much details and resolution that D90 gave in the bass, mids, and treble, and then how nicely natural the tone and timbre was. Soundstage of the D90 is also something that it does very well. I was rather impressed at how nice and wide and how grand things can sound. They can sound rather big and large, and it has a nice presence about it. You can tell differences between venues, and it doesn't sound artificial. Even though it sounds big and open and spacious, it still sounds properly reproduced. Has very good depth. You can look into the stage very well, and then it has really good layering, so you can dissect the stage. You can go row 1, row 2, row 3, place things in front and behind. And then the imaging is really well. You can really hone in, laser point, go, that's right there, and whoo, it's moving. Oh, it's moving. Oh, that's in front, that's behind, they swapped. Yeah, all that in the stage is very well portrayed in the D90 Sabre. I was rather impressed by the soundstage capabilities for gaming, movie reproduction, and also in music. Tone and timbre, as I mentioned, is very, very well done. I was rather impressed at how natural it sounds. And if I had one nitpick, it's that the lower mids and bass don't quite have as much note weight and as much of a spotlight on them as the upper mids and treble do. But it's not enough to be off-putting or to be distracting in any way. I just wish that it was a little bit more even throughout when it came to the note weight, and a little bit more of the authority, and having just the same spotlight and highlights on the bass and the lower mids as do the upper mids and treble have. And then detail retrieval and resolution. This is a DAC that doesn't leave a detail behind. It is very much the focus, and you're going to get it all. And it's a very revealing DAC. I was rather surprised at how much information I was getting. And then it resolves it very well. If you want to know whether or not your library of music is well mastered and mixed, the D90 will tell you that. If you want to know, hey, do I have some tracks in here that aren't so good? It'll tell you that. And it's a very good technical DAC, the Topping D90iii Sabre. I'm rather impressed by its technical chops. Just that little nitpick with note weight and a little bit more dynamics in the lowers. I hooked up the Topping D90iii Sabre to various amplifiers. I hooked it up to my Mytek HPA and was rather impressed with that pairing. I thought it sounded very good. Hooked it up to the Tor Audio Roger, played very well on tubes, and I was kind of enjoying the presentations that I was getting with various headphones. And then I moved over to the Aune S9C Pro and kind of was bored. And I found that it was just kind of not really engaging. The other ones, even though they had that little bit of lack of dynamics in the bass and lower mids region, the Aune really sounded lackluster. I was rather surprised at that it just kind of brought that feature out, and it was not a good pairing at all. I tried all sorts of headphones and I was just kind of like, just kind of going through the motions. Tried some other amplifiers that I have here in-house, JDS Labs Atom Plus, the Audiophile Deckard, the Drop THX1 Linear, and several others. And I was rather surprised at how good it sounded. But the one thing that always stood out was that little bit lack of dynamics, especially on the bottom end, in the mids and in the bass. I just kind of wish it had a little bit more and just a little bit fuller of note weight. Comparing it to a couple other DACs. So the Fiio K9 AKM. Now the Fiio K9 AKM is a whole lot cheaper than the Topping. But the Fiio K9 AKM has that dynamics in the bass. It has that robustness and that power and that authority and a little bit more fullness. And it kind of gives you a little bit of engagement, and it kind of brings you into the moment when listening that the Topping just can't do. But the Topping is better detailed, better resolving. Tone and timbre are similar. The K9 AKM sounds very good and is very natural and accurate in its tone and timbre. Details is what sets it apart, with the Topping D90iii Sabre being slightly better in that regard. But the Fiio has the bottom end. Going into the Aune S9C Pro. Now the Aune S9C Pro also has that more powerful bottom end. It gives you that authority, gives you that engagement factor, and it just sounds more alive and accurate on the bottom end, and doesn't have those moments of boring like the Topping D90iii Sabre does. Tone and timbre again are very similar. And then detail retrieval and resolution. The Topping is slightly better, but it's not this bigger difference like it is with the Fiio. And then the Mytek Liberty DAC 2. Now, the Mytek Liberty DAC 2 is the only DAC that I have that has better details and resolution than the Topping D90. It is a more analytical listen. It is a little bit more neutral sounding and is more even. But it also has a more natural presentation in that bottom end, and you do get a little bit more power and authority in the bottom end. Like the Fiio and the Aune, but not quite as much fullness as those two have, but it is more than what the Topping has. So the Topping D90iii Sabre. I like this DAC. For $900 for a standalone DAC, it is a little bit pricey, whereas with the Mytek, the Aune, the Fiio, and several others, you get a headphone output as well. It's not a standalone only. And as a standalone only at $900, it is slightly pricey. I do wish the price was a little bit lower, but I like this one. Believe it or not, this is my favorite Topping DAC that I've heard. The Topping D90iii Sabre is impressive, but the one thing that holds me back from purchasing it is that little nitpick that I have with the note weight and the authority and power and just robustness in the bottom end that the others offer. It's been Dave, the Honest Audiophile. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Speaking of next video, somewhere on the screen, subscription links and notification bells. If you haven't already, please check those off. Don't forget to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to the video, and check out all the links down below. There's all kinds of information down there regarding how you contact channel, follow channel, support channel. And also, I want to thank all my supporters through Patreon and YouTube memberships. Thank you very much for all that you provide to the channel. It's much appreciated. If you're interested in supporting the channel, there's various ways that you can do that, with one-time gifts through PayPal, Venmo, and also through the YouTube super chats and all that kind of stuff. But if you're interested in supporting the channel through monthly subscriptions, you can do that with Patreon and YouTube memberships, where you can get early access to videos like the video that's out right now for the Topping D90iii Sabre, or also access to my private Discord server. So if you're interested in supporting the channel, it'd be much appreciated. Also down below, there's all kinds of other information down there, gear recommendations, music recommendations, and all kinds of other things. So check out the links down below. And lastly, don't forget to enjoy the music, and that honesty is the best policy.